Hi guys, hope you can hear me and see me. Very cold today here in sunny England. We've got snow. Very cold. I hope you're all well. Thanks for joining me for another daily lesson. So today we're going to talk about a very what's the word? Probably overrepresented topic in jazz, which is modes. When you're actually playing jazz, you very rarely actually talk about modes. I couldn't tell you the last time I sat down and spoke about modes with another musician. But I think it's a big part of the YouTube guitar community, and it's been used a lot in sort of classic books like the Mark Levine Jazz Theory Workbook. And one thing I'd like to say before we start the lesson is in a recent Barry Harris video where it was a thank you video, he joked that no one ever asked, this part wasn't a joke, he said no one ever asked the actual jazz players how they played jazz. Academics would listen to it and interpret it. And that's part of the problem, I think, with where the confusion with modes comes in. The joke that Barry Harris made was that he's 96. He's one of the really great bebop piano players, and he says, I still don't know what a mode is. So just to define what a mode is, first of all, if you know any of your classical scales, which is the major scale, the harmonic minor scale, and the melodic minor scale, let's say C major. C, D, E, F, G, A, B. Those are the notes of C major. If I take those exact same notes and instead of starting on C, I just start on D. I don't change the notes. I just change where I start in that sequence. So instead of going C, D, E, I'm now going to go D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and then I'm back to D. Or I could go E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E. So I'm saying the same notes. All of those examples I've just said there were the notes of C major. Therefore, saying them in a different way means they are the modes of C major. Okay, the modes of the major scale. So remember that if you learn your major scale, your melodic minor scale, and your harmonic minor scale, which are the three scales I bang on about to no end on this channel, as always, I'll put a card up here where you can go away and learn them. Something should pop up here at some point. Learn those three scales, and you don't really need to know modes because you'll understand how music works. And even if you hear a mode and people are talking about modes, you're going to understand how to hear the classical scales over the top. But anyway, today's lesson is about modes. Now, when do we talk about modes? Well, modes are a more contemporary jazz compositional device. Now, that's not saying that modes are contemporary. Modes were used way back in like the 1500s and 1400s in ancient church music. Messiaen used them in the sort of 20th century, and they're not a new thing. But modal jazz was really, guys like Miles Davis really made modal jazz a thing. And when we talk about modes is when we're talking about vamps. So if we're saying, So What, for example, I think is in D minor, we would say there's only two chords in that tune, D minor 7 and E flat minor 7, okay? So we are playing Dorian vamp. And what that means is we're just going to, I think it's, I've chosen a bad tune here because I can't remember how it goes, but 16 bars and then 8 bars of E flat minor and then 8 bars of D minor 7 to finish, I think. So you're playing one chord for 16 bars. So on and so forth. So there we could say, it's a Dorian soundscape, okay? I'll explain what Dorian means in a moment. But that would be one example where we might talk modally. But again, if you knew your major scales, you would just think, where does D minor live in my major scales? And you would know what to do. So I strongly recommend, if you're not 100% confident with your classical scales, you may find that this helps reinforce that. But don't worry about trying to learn all 7 modes before you've even got your three classical scales learned, 3 traditional scales, not major scales. Anyway, let's crack on. So the way I want to teach this to you today is the way that I saw Gary Burton, the vibes player, who's just an absolute monster, both as a musician and as an educator. I think he's still at Berkeley. I may be wrong, but he definitely was at Berkeley for a while. He may be at Juilliard now, I can't remember. Anyway, Gary Burton, he's just one of the greats. He's played with everyone you can ever think of. And the way he teaches the modes, which is a brilliant way of thinking about it, is from brightest to darkest. Now, what we mean by brightest to darkest is the most sharpened notes to the most flattened notes. And when we're saying sharpened and flattened, we're meaning compared to the major scale. Okay? So when we're learning them this way, we don't actually learn them in the traditional order. I'll explain the traditional order in a moment as well. To make this clearer, I've written them all starting on C. So you can really see the differences. If you just run your eyes down each column, you can see how they change. And understanding that change, understanding the flavour each one brings, really helps us emphasise the Lydian sound or the Dorian sound, whatever it is. And if we've got time at the end, I'll build a few more chord examples. I did build a few modal chords in a lesson 3 videos ago, I think it was. But I'll build some more to demonstrate. So I'm just going to remind your ears of the major scale, which is, scale number 1 here. The posh modal name for it is Ionian, but, if anyone ever says, let's play in the Ionian mode, just give them a slap, because they're being pretentious. So, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. Back to C. So all of our modes are going to be drawn from, are going to be compared to that scale. So if we start at the top with the brightest mode is actually mode number 4. So I'll give you the example in C major, and then we'll look at exactly what's written on the board. So mode number 4 in C major would be C, D, E, F. It would be playing C major, starting and ending on the note F. So rather than starting on C like I just did, I play those same notes but start on the F. So that I'm going F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, E, D, C, B, A, G, F. Sorry about the awful singing. And the major scale is C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C. All the same notes, just starting and ending at a different point. So now if I play starting on C, we notice that instead of C major, the unique note here is F sharp. That's the brightest mode we've got. I've written in green here, not very clearly, again, it's not shown up on the board very well, but I've written at the top and bottom 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, just so you know which degree of the scale I'm talking about. But you can see that the 4th note is sharp. That means higher, which gives us, it sounds like we're just going to play major, but instead we get, and that takes us by surprise. We go, oh, where did that come from? It gives us that really bright sound. So if we want to build a Lydian chord, we need to make sure that we've got that note in there, which is the F sharp. So we need to know that it's major, so we'd have to have the 3rd in, or here. And a major 7 is a very unique sound as well, which we don't get in many chords. So would be a lovely way to play that. And if I put the C at the bottom, ooh, lovely sound. Or we could go, okay. Yeah. So all I'm doing to build these nice modal chords is saying, well, what 3 or 4 notes? I like to stick to triads, as you know, which I define as being a 3-note chord, any 3-note chord, not the classical way. If you pick out 3 notes that really highlight the chord and the colour, the brightness of that mode, people are going to really respond to that. And again, to refer to Barry Harris, another great player, educator, just like Gary Burton, we often use 2 big chords in jazz. We play too many notes. if you need that many notes to describe a scale, you're playing the wrong notes. Okay, get rid of notes. Get rid of notes. Now the next up is just the major scale. Okay, now that is almost the same as Lydian, but this F sharp is back to an F natural, so it's a tiny bit flatter sounding. If I start on the major scale, on the Lydian scale, sorry. Now major. It sounds a bit darker now. It's weird that, because we're not used to hearing the major scale sounding mellow. There's that bright sound. It makes my eyebrows go up just hearing that. Makes me sit up straighter. And then I'm sort of sinking in my chair a little bit for the major. So the major scale, unique notes in the major scale. Bassist's always going to play the root, so we don't need to worry about playing C and any. Have tones and semitone clashes where possible in the chord. So that would mean if we're playing E or B, we don't like to use the perfect fourth in chords ever. It just is a weird sound in a major context. So that gives us D and E or A and B. So what should I go for? I'll go for A and B. So E, A, B, and over C. Lovely sound. And here's with D. Okay, so we've got a lovely major sound. Okay, the next mode, if we compare the notes, are almost exactly the same, but we've got a flat 7. What I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to highlight these important notes so that when you go away and work on these, we know the major third's important in the Lydian because it needs to be a major sound. The bright 4, very important, and the major 7, very important. Okay, those notes are what makes the Lydian sound Lydian. The major scale, the major third, and the major 7 are very important. Okay, D and A are your secondary important notes. So in the Mixolydian, well, it's still a major sound, so we've still got the major third. You see, it's the same third as we had before, but now we've got a flattened 7th. Now, like I say, we like semitones in music. We don't like the semitone between a major third and a fourth, though. That sounds jarring. But look, A to B flat, that gives us a semitone. So I'm going to play the scale of Mixolydian, the mode, so you can hear what it sounds. And then I'm going to play those highlighted notes. They're going to be my Mixolydian chord. So here's the Lydian. I'll go through them in order. C Lydian, C major, C Mixolydian. And they should get not sadder but flatter sounding. Lydian. Major. Mixolydian. So that at the top. Okay. So the Mixolydian is mode number 5. So in C major, C, D, E, F, G, it will be playing C major starting and ending on G. Let's prove that. So if I play C major, but I start and end on G. Okay, so I've got root, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, flat 7. Okay? And if I play it starting on C, I've got the same thing. Root, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, flat 7, root. Okay? Remember, guys, it's the structure, it's the distance from one note to the next that makes it Mixolydian. It's not the specific letters, which is why I can demonstrate it starting on G or I can demonstrate it starting on C. Okay, let's hear the Mixolydian chord. So the beautiful sounds in a Mixolydian, the most important ones, this is just my interpretation, guys. This isn't, you won't find this in a textbook. This is just my personal experience. We need to know whether a chord is major or minor, okay, what we call the tonality. So we do need the third. The B flat is the unique note to this mode. We haven't had a B flat yet. We've had B natural so far. And then we like semitones in contemporary styles of music. They give us kind of trendy but like a like dirty sound, but like in a good way. You know what I mean? So E, A, and B flat would sound like this. And if I give it the context by playing the bass note. Or I could go. That's a very Mixolydian sound. Yeah. The reason I really emphasize these chords, guys, is you should get that sound in your head. You should learn to hear that chord and not only think, oh, that's a C13, which is what that technically is, but you think, oh, that's a Mixolydian sound. So if it were a vamp, if there was a song that just went, which is basically every blues, by the way. Okay, you know what I'm trying to do. Okay, there's a Mixolydian sound. Okay, moving on, we're now looking at the second mode of the major scale because it's almost the same as the Mixolydian. Do you see? There's one note different, which is here, flattened third. So the second mode of the C major scale would be C, D. It would be playing C major, but starting and ending on the second note, which is D. So here's C major. And I'm going to play those exact same notes. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C. But instead of starting on that C, I'm going to start on the second note and go up one extra note. D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. Okay, so that's a Dorian sound. In C, that would sound like this. Let's do them in order. Start Lydian, C Ionian, C Mixolydian, C Dorian. Going to get darker and still. Lydian. Ionian. Mixolydian. Starting to get dark. Dorian. Okay, so for the Dorian, our unique notes, our important notes, are obviously we've now gone minor. So it's very important that we make sure the listener knows we're minor. If we don't play an E flat, if we don't play an E of any sort, they can't tell whether we are Mixolydian or whether we are Dorian. Okay? Now, to make the... We've got a flat 7, which is an important sound. We've got to add a semitone in here somewhere, okay? Well, now we've got a semitone, because we've flattened the third, we've now got a semitone between the second and the flat third. Now, I want to point something out here. Although the Mixolydian had a flat 7, and it was a unique note, because it was the first scale to do so, all the others now have a flat 7. So it's not that unique a sound anymore. Playing a flat 7 alone isn't going to tell you which mode you're in, because all of these have a B flat. So we've got to look for more unique characteristics. And so we've got D and E flat as a clash. The A is the only minor scale. It's the only scale with an E flat and an A natural. Do you see that? All the others with an E flat have an A flat. So this A is really important. So we've got 4 options here. This is the first time we've been able to have this interval down here, and it's the only minor scale which has got that and an A. So I'm gonna choose D, E flat, and A because it's unique to the Dorian, and that should give me a really nice Dorian mode, Dorian chord. Sorry. So I'm going to play that here. And if I add the C at the bottom, or now if I want to get a double clash, I can kind of do this stretch shape here, which is very Holdsworthy. D, E flat, A, B flat. Okay. Oh, if I sing the root. Which is a lovely sound because it's a double semitone, Lydian. Everything else has got a B flat already. All these other modes have got something else more important than the B flat. Major 7 though is only in 2 scales, so that is always important to include it. Brilliant. So I'm going to actually just rub the red off that B flat there, because I think those really I've committed. Those are my important Dorian notes. Next up, the 6th mode, C, D, E, F, G, A. Okay, so this is playing the notes of C major, starting and ending on A. Here's C major. Starting and ending on A, same notes. Okay, this one's got a very sorrowful sound. Although the Dorian is a minor sound, it's kind of got this brightness to it because it's got that lift on the A. Aeolian's the first scale where I start to feel a bit down, feel a bit, poignant. So let's hear that again. Okay. Now, in this example, starting on C, let's hear it by itself and then we'll hear it in context. Okay, and in context, so I'm going to go 4, 1, 5, 2, 6. Okay, Lydian, Ionian, Mixolydian, Dorian, Aeolian. Here we go. Ionian, Mixolydian, Dorian, and Aeolian. Now, as a guitarist, you'll possibly notice as well that the first 4, I start in this stretch position. Okay, where I've got a stretcher from, in this instance, because I'm on C, fret 3 to fret 7. So Lydian, Ionian, Mixolydian, Dorian. Now watch this. It's got smaller, it's got flatter sounding. And you can see my range is from fret 3 to fret 6. Now that may just be a coincidence, we'll see if that's true of the remaining scales as well, but it looks smaller under my fingers. What's our unique notes here then? Well, the first time we've had an A flat. So A flat is unique to Aeolian. It's got to be minor. We've got to know it's minor, so we need to have the third. You notice all of these I'm going to end up with the third coloured in red, very likely. And then we like a clash. Well, we've got 2 options for a clash here. We've got D and we've got G. Well, we'll try both, but I'm going to commit to D in the end, I think, because 2 of our scales have a D flat in them, whereas every scale has a G but 1. So G is pretty much in every single mode. D is in most of them, but it is unique to 5 instead of 6. So D is probably going to take my semitone preference. We don't need the B flat anymore because we know it's going to be a B flat. So look, the modal harmony would sound like this. Which one should I go for? I'm going to commit to the D. So let's go D, E flat, A flat with the bass note. Gives us that the autumn leaves. Yeah. let's try it with the G and the A flat. Would be we're going to play that. I'm going to play that here. Oh, a bit of a stretch. That's not got as much colour to me as this. Yeah, that's definitely better. So we're going to commit to D. Okay, next up, Phrygian. Now, Phrygian's one that we talk about quite a lot as musicians. The major scale modes we talk about a lot. In the harmonic minor, really, we only talk about Phrygian dominant, and in the melodic minor, we talk about Lydian dominant and the altered scale. Now, that's not to say we never talk about others, but those are common parlance amongst more advanced guitarists. Because the musical context often requires them. So the Phrygian is one which we associate with a sort of Spanishy sound very often. And if we look at what makes it unique, it's the third mode of the major scale, so C, D, E. So that would be E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E is Phrygian. Still the notes of C major, but we're saying them starting and ending on the third. Let's hear what that sounds like. There's our notes starting and ending on the third. Okay. So it's got a very dark sound to it. Okay, let's try it in context. So Lydian, Ionian. Remember, Ionian just major scale, guys. That's why it's just number one, starting and ending on the first note of the scale. Mixolydian, Dorian, Aeolian, a Phrygian. Then we're nearly done. Here we go, Lydian. Major. Mixolydian. Dorian. Aeolian. And Phrygian. Okay. So what's the unique notes of the Phrygian? Well, let's have a little look. Our different note is the flat 2. That's the first D flat we've had. Notice it's the very first flat and second. We need to know whether it's major or minor. Yeah, and everything else we've already seen in other scales, but A flat we've only seen in one other scale. So I'm going to commit to the A flat here. Okay. So if we look at D flat, E flat, A flat, sorry, rubbing my face here, by itself it doesn't really sound very anything. It's what we call a sus2 chord, but we've got to add the context of the C. Whoa, now that is I'll try a different pickup. You can hear there's oscillation going on there. The frequencies are not, they're not happy with that. So if I do this on a different sound, let's do it on E. That's the Phrygian sound there. Okay. So I'm picking out what the unique notes are to that mode and relying on those to build my harmony. Remember, using the Tim Miller approach, ignoring the root because the bassist is going to play it. I've got 3 underlined notes in red, and then I've got 3 not underlined notes in red. We can make 2 triads there. We can make 2 3-note chords. E, F sharp, B, D, G, A, and I can swap between them to fill in the whole mode, whilst only using small note groupings of 3, and that gives me the full mode, but only in groups of 3 notes at a time, so it's not overbearing to the listener. And you can practice moving those around almost like a chord scale around the neck. So that first one you go D, G, A, then the next chord you go E, F sharp, B, then you go an inversion of D, G, A, then E, F sharp, B, so on and so forth. Finally, nearly done here, guys. Well done if you're still with me. We've got the Locrian. Now, the Locrian is very, very, very rarely used for various reasons. But, you know, a lot of people say that this doesn't even exist because it's really just a 7 chord in its first inversion, all this sort of stuff, or it's a 2 chord in the harmonic minor if you see a minor 7 flat 5. People just don't really use this one, but or at least don't talk about it. Let's look at it anyway. So it's in C major. This would be the 7th mode. So that would be C, D, E, F, G, A, B. So it's playing C major in a B way, which would sound like this. Okay. Right. Let's hear it in context. Lydian, Ionian, Mixolydian, Dorian, Aeolian, Phrygian, Locrian. Sorry, start again. I'll start again because I'm playing Ionian there, not Lydian. Let's try again. Lydian. Ionian. Mixolydian. Dorian. Aeolian. Phrygian. And Locrian. Okay, so it gets darker every single time. Let's look at what the unique notes are. The first thing you'll notice is it's the very first scale, very first mode of the G flat. So G flat is the note. Everything in this is flat. Every single thing you see in this chord is flat. So it's a minor chord. And as I've talked about before, we like semitones. So we could play an F and get a next door 3-note cluster. It's also, however, only one of 2 scales with a D flat. So I'd be torn between the D flat and the F. Now, of course, F is in most scales, but that semitone clash between the 4th and the 5th isn't. So it might be interesting to hear how those sound, and we can commit to our favourite. So D flat, E flat, G flat is this. And over the C, can I do that? Is my hand big enough? I'm gonna have to revoice it. D flat, E flat, F. Let's try it like that. Okay, that's tricky. So that's E flat, G flat, D flat. That's these 3, and then let's see if I can find a way to play it with the F. Let's try D flat, F, G flat. Let's try E flat, F, G flat if I can figure out how to do it. Okay. Right. So obviously, the wider apart these notes are, the harder it is to do it on the axe. But I hope you get the point. You get the theory here. So I'm going to wrap it up there, guys. To sum all this up, compare everything for the rest of your life. The reason I made that video 2 days ago, why the major scale is so important, is because every single theory in the world, you want to compare it to the major scale. Major scale is the expected. We expect everything to be the major scale. Once you know your 12 major scales, there's only 12 to learn. It doesn't take very long. I've had primary school kids learn them in a few weeks. It really isn't that challenging if you just go root, tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. What you want to do for the rest of your life, anything you play, whether it's they go, this is a C, and you go, oh, thank you very much. We miss the step that every other instrument has to do when they read music, which is, oh, well, but why is that a C? What does it mean to be a C? And, this is C minor. Well, why? Well, you need to analyse it. You need to compare those, work out what those notes are, not what the frets are, what the notes are, using letters. This is the language of music. And then you compare it to your major scale and you go, oh, so minor is when I've got a flattened third. And now you know minor is a flattened third. And you can then apply that all around the neck. And those small chunks you learn, those chord symbols or bits of tab, you can now expand them around the neck correctly. And you know how to apply them rather than just having to sort of try everything out. You save yourself so much time by spending a bit more time thinking about how everything compares to the major scale. I promise you, because I didn't do that. And then as soon as I started doing it, I realised, things all start to click into place. On that note, guys, we'll wrap it up. As always, comments and requests down below for future lessons. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Cheers.